Dolph going to say something about the database? Very important.
Well, I hope it was clear that it's not that important after all these days. Yeah, we came together with a group of people working on databases, but also working on collection of data and sharing knowledge amongst people. It was clear from the whole session that there's a need, at least, from different user groups for different reasons, but also a lot of questions related to that. One of them is the data quality, of course. Okay, for that we have been putting together 4 presentations. One was on the ESVD, which hopefully will be launched in March next year online, so it will be publicly accessible through the internet. We will try to coordinate that as ESP, and it will be an open source or publicly available, and will include a review committee. So this should ensure some data quality checks by experts, which is you. So I don't know how much you trust yourself, but then the second presentation was by Earth Economics by Jennifer Harrison Cox. There she is. This is a similar database also on valuation, but it is a bit more sophisticated. It has a slightly broader audience, or more selective audience, specific audience indeed. It has a high quality standard due to these restrictions of the audience, policymakers they are. So I think that there is already a sign of cooperation there. I think Jennifer clearly indicated that these kind of data should be used as an answer to the question, why should we start thinking about this? And that's also what she made clear during that presentation, I think. The third presentation was on the Iucn working groups on different biomes. And it was done by Elena Illich and David Vatkar. Well, they show clearly that there's a large network of experts which already have considerable experience in valuation, and they also touch upon many topics that we are actually discussing here as well, which basically relates again to for example, the ESVD, this database, which these experts could also be used to do the data check, or to suggest more publications, or even add data to the database we're trying to develop. Fourth, and I'm really enthusiastic always about this one, is the Marine Ecosystem Services Partnership. He mentioned explicitly that it is a partnership and not a database. It's a bit of a library. It's a browsing database, so that he can have access to multiple databases. And the whole goal of this database is more or less to provide an overview of what data is in all the databases that are online, so to say. And that was Linwood's presentation. He's from Duke University. What came clear from this session, I think that again, there's a need, and there's a lot of people working on a topic, and there's a lot of possibilities for cooperation, both on data entry, but also the review, also the possibility to discuss the structures of the databases and the typologies that are being used in these databases to classify data. And second and fourth, I should say, it made clear that ESP or another organization should take the lead to start up a working group to coordinate this, and I think that we can say that ESP will do that, and we're looking for volunteers who would like to be in this working group. So I'm not asking you to raise your hand at this moment, but please contact us if you feel interested. You will definitely get emails about it. And the main idea behind all this is to have as many flowers bloom as possible, because there's not one database that can fit all needs. Thank you.
Thank you all. A final presentation until we move to Dave. Simone and Dixon.
Okay, so this is on the semi-plenary that we had on knowledge sharing, networking and capacity building. And in the spirit of knowledge sharing, networking and capacity building, I asked some others from different stages in their career as well as working on different scales, what they thought about it, about the session. So Dixon and Dieter are also going to present a slide on this as well. So this was our topic, was on knowledge sharing, looking at the activity through which knowledge is exchanged amongst people, networking as a self-organising system of people or organisations that find common ground, and capacity building, which is strengthening the skills, competencies and abilities of people and communities. So, Dixon?
This is well rehearsed. So I think I'm either representing something about career position or maybe spatial scales. But my impression was that there was a lot of participation in this group from the, I would call it, early career scientists. And it was quite impressive from the standpoint of thinking about new media opportunities and new ways to do networking. I can tell you when I was in grad school, networking wasn't even a word. So there's been a lot of changes and certainly a lot of different ways to do it, and I was very impressed with that. And in a related observation, in looking at the poster sessions, I was very impressed by the new career or early career scientists who were making inroads into this effort, and I think that's what we need is new ideas. The old ones haven't been working too well.
During our sessions, we were talking as well of these self-organizing groups or organisms. What we find out, you need to build that on trust, openness, and benefits. There have to be benefit. There has to be continuity. A lot of projects come in an area, move out, new projects, so there is no continuity. It's really important for that. We need to understand social behavior, but not only understand it, but engage with them. We need to have local capacity on the ground. When we start a project, that there is on the ground somebody there already. The research has to be action-orientated, and we need to put more emphasis on a role of facilitating, integrating, and enabling this kind of processes and this kind of networks. Just a fast go. So I said just before, we need active listening. What we need to do is not only try to say that we're going to create our awareness to the stakeholders. We as well need to be aware of what the stakeholders' needs are, and everybody needs to understand each other. Then you will get this collective intelligence that people will start learning together and take action together, so you get collective-based action. And then you get, I think when you get that, people are going to invest in natural capital, but when we want to really have healthy ecosystems, I believe we need to as well have social capital in. We as people are part of an ecosystem, so when there is natural capital and there is social capital, we have an healthy ecosystem.
Okay, so a couple of the other things that came out of the workshop, that we need to establish clear aims for these networks, that the aim of these networks is different to the aims of the project. We need to look at the shape of these networks, that participants shape the process and the outcomes, and we need to be aware of that when we're developing networks and applying these networks. Look at the time frames. We often develop these networks, but once the term of the project's finished or the funding's finished, what happens to these people? Are they fully supported? Can they work? Can they continue to operate on their own or in their own organisations? And looking at change, people need to want to change. They need to want to do it, that we can't make people change. So this is very much a process when we're working with ecosystem services. Social learning, transparency and empowerment is really important to this knowledge sharing, networking and capacity building. There were some questions that fell out of this. such as I said, how do the participants shape the process? We need to be very clear with that. Depending on who's involved in your network will certainly determine the outcomes that you're going to produce from that network. And that we need to establish the process and then let the science feed into it, and we need to consider the end users, that we're people that we're trying to communicate to and get those outputs to who we want to apply these concepts and the tools and the knowledge that we're developing. There was also a question about what's the cost effectiveness of networks. But then we also thought, well, do we need to know what the cost effectiveness is of these? How do we value social capital? We know it is important. We know it's needed for on-ground action, but we also know that it's important to have these networks right through the scales, from the local community level up to national organisations. One of the questions I didn't put on there was actually, what is the definition of a network? Some of the presentations were very much a mandate had been developed by governments, and there was a number of agencies that have got together, and whether these were self-organising systems or something that was mandated, and therefore these people had to come together and do that. But certainly they were really important, whether they're networks or whether they're collaborations, for this knowledge sharing and capacity building.
Thank you so much.